When adding and subtracting algebraic terms, we can only add like terms. And we never say a minus and a minus gives a positive and things like that. We actually try and look, if we walk on the number line, where are we going to end with that answer? I'll illustrate that when we get to go through the examples. Question 1. We group together the like terms and make sure that the sign in front of the number, that goes with that term. So if we have 2x plus 4x is 6x, minus 1x is equal to 5x. The 3, there's no other constant term, so the 3 just remains the same. 2x squared is not like the terms of the x because the index is different, so that also remains on its own. And that's your final answer. Nothing can be simplified any further. If we look at the second question, 2ab is our first term. It doesn't matter if the pronumerals are in a different order, as long as the pronumerals as well as their indices are exactly the same. So those two terms are like terms. 2ab plus 7ab is equal to 9ab. We prefer writing pronumerals in alphabetical order to make it easier to recognize like terms. Now, if we have negative 5 minus 4, if we imagine walking on the number line, there's 0, there's negative 5. If I'm minus 4, I'm going to walk in that direction. So if I walk 4 spaces in that direction, I'm going to end at negative 9. The last term doesn't have any other terms of the same type, so that remains 4abc. And that's your final answer. In example 3, we look at brackets. It's important to remember that the sign between the 3 and the bracket is multiplication. So the 3 needs to be multiplied with every term inside that brackets. 3 times x is 3x, 3 times 4 is 12. Once again, it's very important to remember that the sign in front of the number goes with that number. It's negative 5 times by x is minus 5x. And I'll talk about the signs and multiplication again in a later example. Negative 5 times negative 1 is positive 1. I'm not adding now, I'm multiplying. Once I have finished multiplication, I'm now going to group like terms together and add or subtract them. 3x minus 5x. Once again, if you imagine the number line, that's 0. I start at 3x, subtract 5, so I walk in that direction. Minus 5 will get me at negative 2. So that gives me minus 2x. Plus 12 plus 1 is plus 13. And that's your final answer. Question 4, we now have a combination of fractions and algebra. So we apply all the standard rules of both of those topics. First thing we need to do is check if the denominators are the same. If they are, we can add straight away. For this question, we first have to get a common denominator. We try and get the slowest common denominator, and that will be 6. So we're going to change both the denominators to 6. If I change 2 to 6, I multiply it by 3. So I do exactly the same to the numerator. 3 times 5n is 15n. If I change 3 to 6, I multiply it by 2. So this numerator is also multiplied by 2. N times 2 is 2n. These two terms are like terms, so I can add 15n plus 2n is 17n over 6. That fraction can't be simplified, so that's my final answer. Example 5 has another fraction. When we have a mixture of whole numbers and fractions, it's best to write that as a fraction first as well. Write your whole number over 1. And after that, we follow exactly the same pattern as we've done in the previous example. We need to get a common denominator. The denominators 1 and 5 gives a common denominator of 5. If I change this denominator to 5, I multiply it by 5. So I do exactly the same to the numerator. 5 times 2p is 10p. This denominator is already 5, so I don't change it at all. Then neither do I change the numerator. It stays exactly the way it is. I now simplify by adding like terms. 10p plus 2p is equal to 12p divided by 5. That fraction can't simplify, so that's the final answer. We're now going to look at multiplication and division. When there's a lot of things to be done and a very busy question, it's good practice to first multiply the signs, the plus and minus, minus and minus, whatever it might be. Then you multiply the coefficients, the numbers in front of the pronumerals. And lastly, you multiply the pronumerals and see what the effect on the indices would be. When we multiply and divide, we look a bit different at the signs than with plus or minus. That's when we say a plus times a plus is equal to a plus, a minus times a minus is a plus. So when the two symbols you are multiplying or dividing are the same, the answer will be positive. When the two symbols you are multiplying or dividing are different, the answer will be a negative. Let's look at an example. 24x to the power of 10y divided by 16x cubed y squared. It is good practice to write this in fraction form. So we're going to write 24x to the power of 10y divided by 16x to the third y squared. If there's no symbol present, it means a positive divided by a positive is equal to a positive again. Once again, we don't have to write that symbol down. Now we're going to divide and simplify the coefficients. So we want to simplify those two numbers. So we're going to look for the highest number that can divide into both of them. 8 can divide into 16 and into 24. So if we divide 24 by 8, we get 3, and 16 divided by 8 is 2. Now we move on to the pronumerals and the coefficients. With times and divide, we can times and divide even if the coefficients are different. With division, we're going to subtract the indices. The highest indice is above the line, so that's where the answer will be. And then 10 minus 3 is 7. If we go to the y's, if there's no index, it might be good practice to write there that it means y to the power of 1. The highest index is below the line, so that's where my answer will be for the y. Now I subtract the indices. 2 minus 1 is 1. So with division, I'm going to subtract the indices and the coefficients are divide and simplified as always. Example 7. Multiplication. We're first going to multiply the signs. Minus times by a minus. The two signs are the same, so that gives a positive answer. You don't have to write that positive. You can also leave that out. 2 times 3 is 6. I am now moving on to the pronumerals and indices. If I multiply, indices are added. 3 plus 4 is 7. Once again, it might be good practice to write the 1 if it's just b to the power of 1. Add the indices. 2 plus 1 is b to the power of 3. And that's your final answer.